Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. As usual, folks, we're going to have a great show. I need you to be involved. I need you to stay put and listen after we get through a few initial things with a short documentary that we made when we were at Move to Amend. But anyhow, we're going to have a great show today. What's going on in the news today? Oh, Trump answered some questions. Everybody got excited for Robert Mueller. We don't know if he turned it in or not yet. Oh, what else is going on? Look over there. Look over there. Nancy Pelosi is getting some people that are challenging her for the speakership to be Speaker of the House. Well, where does that really stand? Does it really make any sense? Look, I am as progressive as there is, in my humble opinion. I think I've earned my progressive bona fides or bona fides, or however we want to say it out here. But I think we need to make sure not to have unintended fights before it is due. And I think we ought to be very cautious in the way we do things. What do I mean by that? Look, Nancy Pelosi is a neoliberal. That's a fact. Nancy Pelosi is a liberal, but not a very progressive liberal. That is a fact. Do I want her as speaker? Yes, I do. Oh, shocker. How can this real progressive left-winger want Pelosi as the speaker? I want Pelosi as the speaker because I do not see right now she has not done her job to groom the next young upcoming woman, in my opinion, to run the House. I don't think anyone is ready in knowing the technicalities as she does, and I don't think anyone made themselves prepared to do that. One thing is wanting somebody more progressive in there, in my humble opinion. The other thing is having someone more progressive that is competent given the headwinds that we're going to face. So this left-wing progressive liberal right now wants as his Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, not out of love, not out of desire for what's going on, but specifically because I think from a tactical standpoint, again, in my humble opinion, it's the best move. I think going forward, it is imperative that certain concessions are made with leadership to really start grooming people, young people, to start taking over. I mean, a whole bench of young people. We have the same problem with folks running for president. We're still hearing about Biden running for president. Hillary wants to put her hat in the presidency again, and many other folks want to put their hats in the presidency again. But what we need are young folks. Folks, if you're just joining us, please remember to share this program. That's the way we're going to make a difference. That's the way people get to hear us. That's the way we ensure that the real message get out there and not one catered by you know whom. So please, folks, understand what I'm saying. Understand what I'm trying to attempt to do here. This is not to say that we don't need a change. We do need a change. We must have a change, but we have to be practical. We have to be sensible. And here's another kicker, right? Whether you like Nancy Pelosi or not, here it is. This cycle, we got a blue wave. We can blame it on Trump that allowed that blue wave to occur, or we can go ahead, since we don't absolutely know, I think it would send the wrong message and create a great narrative if somehow a woman who has been successful in taking back Congress with all maybe ill-advised money that raised, etc., but that did it, for somehow now not to have the position. That is my humble opinion. Everybody has their own opinion, and you have the right to disagree. But I think on this one, I humbly believe that I'm right. You don't have to agree, but I think that I'm right. Earlier checking my box, right? I got this message from one of our resident or faithful listeners. Thank you so kindly for putting that message in the box. He found an article that said, and let me pull that article up now. I thought I had it up, but somehow it disappeared. But the article was had to do with Bernie Sanders and a notion that he has with or something that he wants Walmart, or restriction that he wants to put on Walmart. And I think it's important. I mean, I think my listener really wanted to hear my position on that, because I think he's going to be, oh my God, I can't believe you people, what you're going to do. I'm pulling up the headline here. It says, Bernie Sanders unveils Stop Walmart Act. Folks, if you're just joining us, please share the program. It is important that we share to ensure that the Facebook algorithm puts these programs up. Facebook has been stingy with political shows, and specifically left-wing or progressive political shows. Ask me not why. Ask me why not. I don't know. You know, people have a tendency to believe these internet companies are so liberal and so progressive, and they harm. I don't see it. But anyhow, so if you're just joining us, it's imperative that you share, my dear friends. Anyhow, the title of the article that my friend, one of our listeners, asked us to talk about is Bernie Sanders unveils Stop Walmart Act. And here's the article. It says, fresh off a campaign to get Amazon to raise its minimum wage, Senator Bernie Sanders is now shining his progressive spotlight on Walmart. Sanders on Thursdays introduced a bill titled the Stop Walmart Act that would prevent large companies from buying back stock unless they pay all employees at least $15 an hour, allow workers to earn up to 7 days of paid sick leave, and limit CEO compensation to no more than 150 times the median pay of all staffers. Secondly, calling Walmart a poster child for corporate greed, Sanders noted that the company made $13 billion in profits last year and paid CEO Doug McMillon more than $22 million, or 1,188 times its typical worker who earned $19,177 a year. Walmart, which this past February raised its minimum wage to $11 an hour, said it offers competitive wages and benefits, as well as the opportunity to advance and earn higher pay. That's what Walmart's response was. And of course, they said, we have increased our starting wages by more than 50% in the last 3 years. If you had to increase your wages by more than 50% in the last 3 years, you've been pilfering people for a long time. And still yet, it's not the right price. And then here's a kicker. And I want you guys to listen to what might come back on this one, because I love the way companies put out truths, right? But they cover the truth in they want you to believe a lie by telling you a truth. Here it goes. We have increased our starting wages by more than 50% in the last 3 years and currently have an average, here's this, an average hourly total compensation of more than $17.50 an hour, the company said in a statement. At the same time, we have also included new benefits like paid time off, advanced job training, paid family leave, and college for $1 a day. Here's the kicker. Look at what he says. We have an average hourly total compensation package of $17.50 an hour. That means total compensation, they could amortize retirement. They could mean, oh, we give you can come to the clinic at the Walmart store. And all these other things are included, because when they say, you notice they didn't say hourly wage. They said the total compensation package of $17.50 an hour. That is to make Bernie Sanders look bad. It's going to say, well, Bernie, Walmart is spending $17.50 on the average worker. Here's the other thing that they don't tell you. Average worker is not median worker. Average worker means you add all the wages that are paid out and you divide it by the number of workers. But if you have a class that makes $22 million, like the CEO makes, and another one makes 19 millions, and another one makes 10 million, and another one makes $5 million, when you do the average, it skews what's really happening. Because then, let me put it this way. Let's say you have a company where you have 10 people employed. You pay one person $9,000, and the other persons get $110 each. Okay, $110.33 each. That's a payroll of $10,000. And you divide the average wage of every person there is $1,000. But the median wage is $133. What I'm trying to tell you folks is this. Companies steal from their employees in some very fanatical ways, in some interesting ways. They make sure that a very small class of their people get very high salaries. And then there is the rest of the folk. They are menial workers. They're not menial. They're the ones who make the company survive. They're the ones who do the work in the company. But they get very little. And folks smile about that. You know, I mean, today a professor, a friend of mine said something, and I'm going to the documentary right now. I want you to stay. This is an important doc. It's not long, but I tell you what, it tells a lot. I'm one of the executive producers on it, of course, and I think somewhere in there, I also made my statement on corporate personhood and that sort of thing in the video. But here's the deal in the doc. Here's the deal. A friend of mine, this professor, he said something, and anytime this guy writes, he always writes with a sort of intensity. You listen to the words, and it really got to you. But today, he wrote something that really got to me, right? And I'm looking it up on the Facebook page right here. He wrote the following. He said, people often claim that we professors make students more liberal. The opposite is true. We simply try to make our students think. But our students make us more liberal because they face struggles every day that privileged people like us have never had to deal with. Watching them struggle with so many issues that I have never had to face makes me want to fight with everything I have to make a better world for them. That's what Cody Polk said on that statement. And that touched me, right? Immediately, because that's what we do here. That is what we're looking for, right? So I replied, I had to say something. I said, Professor Cody Polk is in the thick of things. Like my good friends, Dr. John J. Theis, a professor at one of the colleges out here, Dr. Stephanie M. Kelly, another professor out here, Professor Stephen K. Davis, another professor out here, and many others that I know. That the only reason I call those out is that we've worked intimately in various issues, issues related to progressive planning, etc. And not only that, I've learned a lot from a lot of these professors. But anyhow, these guys don't just see the systemic problems in our society as some abstract theory. They see it every day in the struggles of their students to exist with dignity in a society that by design have created an extractive tunnel vision shrinking, but an empowered class that is robbing them of the future they deserve. Having these educators impart the knowledge those students need to know how to effect change is an altruistic endeavor, especially with the disregard we give to educators in this country. To be clear, I believe those who educate are the most important professionals in our society. Unfortunately, via the Powell Manifesto, corrupted religion, and abject greed of a few, we have set the path to our ultimate demise as a country. Then I pointed to a piece that I wrote supporting teachers, because again, I think teachers are in fact the bastions of society, the most important part of society. But folks, so as far as Walmart is concerned, and Bernie Sanders decided that yes, if they want, here's the deal. I promise you I'm going to the documentary in a minute. But here's the deal. All these companies were allowed to bring all their foreign money back into the United States at a reduced tax rate, a very reduced tax rate, okay? That's what they were afforded. Now, what did they promised? They said, oh, you allow us to bring this money back without paying a hell of a lot of taxes, and we are going to make employment better. We're going to do all these good things, right? And then they gave you the semblance of that happening. They gave some bonuses here and bonuses there. But in reality, bonuses are not wages. Bonuses, you get $1,000 here, you get $50 here, you get $100 here. Oh, you're happy for a few minutes, and then it's gone. And that's what they did. But almost 50% of all that money that came back went as stock buyback. So what is Bernie Sanders saying? Which makes a lot of sense. That was free money given back to all these stockholders. People that are sitting down on at their bench, at their pools, drinking, sipping tea, while everybody else is working with their hands, working with their brains. They're sitting down, making money by not paying the taxes that money would have earned otherwise to take care of other folks that are actually working. So Bernie Sanders is saying, okay, since this is a society, since we define how society works, this is how, and since corporations have now personhood, and you'll hear this discussed in the documentary, since corporations are people as well, you know, in our society, the Supreme Court has said a corporation is a person. So they have rights of a person. I'm not kidding you, folks. They have the rights of a person. Having that rights give them power. So Bernie Sanders said, okay, we'll take care of that. We gave you a big tax break. You want to go ahead and buy back stocks, meaning allow your stocks to be higher, because look at what happens when they buy back stocks, right? They can either give out that money to the people who own the stock as dividends, and that dividend would then be taxed at whatever tax rate that person is at. Or they can go ahead and do stock buybacks, and when stock gets bought back, the price of that stock goes way up. And in going up, when they sell that stock, it's called appreciation. It's not called income. It is damn income, but they're not going to do that. They call it appreciation because they give appreciation, capital gains, a different tax rate than the working person's income. So a person who works can pay up to 30-something% in taxes, but somebody who gets income from appreciation, from capital gains, they pay a much lesser percentage in taxes. So then again, so they get a break from getting the appreciation in their stock for doing absolutely nothing, nada, niet. And then they pay less taxes on that extra money they get. And then they get the opportunity to loan us the deficit, the money to pay for the deficit spending for the taxes we didn't collect from them. Oh, is that a deal or what? Brothers and sisters, we continuously get royally screwed. And in the process, our media don't quite explain to us how it's done. That's what we do here. I'm going to the show now, but before I need to make my first pitch to say, folks, it is essential that you support progressive media like Politics Done Right. I ask you so kindly to go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Again, that is patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And it's very inexpensive. And those of you who contribute get to see the book that I'm writing, How to Make America Utopia. Every time a chapter is released, you get to read the chapter as it is released. And when the book is complete, of course, you get the entire book. That is just a kind of a gimmick to ask you to support. I mean, nobody asks you to support cable, but you do. And you pay $100, $200, $300 for cable. In a lot of these shows, a lot of these programs to misinform you. We are asking you for a cup of coffee to tell you the truth. So please consider going to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. That's patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And let's make a difference. Okay, today's show. Here is how we legalize our democracy, which requires you. Today, we play a Move to Amend documentary on our democracy we produced that details the state that we are in, providing the pathway to subsequently make a change. Many people do not understand that democracy requires a constant fight. If left alone, it reverts to oligarchy, plutocracy, fascism, or totalitarianism by those who take control when no one is looking. Apathy is dangerous. In fact, much of the damage to our body politic and economy pre-Trump and during Trump is a direct result of that apathy. Check this out. Please watch in its entirety. Then please share this show, because folks, we have to be the ones. We have to be the ones making that change. We have to be the one. Here you go.
I would say we need a democracy movement because we need a democracy.
Not free speech. Money is not free speech. Not free speech. Money is not free speech. Money is not free speech.
I like to say that the most dangerous threat to democracy in the United States of America is the mistaken belief that we actually practice one. Because democracy is not a noun, it's a verb. Demos means the people. Kratia means rule. So the word democracy from the Attic Greek means the people rule. We have the trappings of democracy. You get to go and pull a lever every 2 to 4 years. Oh, only for candidates that have been pre-approved and pre-selected by the ruling elite. But when it comes to actually participating in a meaningful way in how our society is organized, you know, how much pay you might get, whether or not you get health care, whether this country goes to war or not, whether we should address the climate crisis, you know, those kinds of questions, we the people never have an opportunity to participate.
Imagine if you will, the debate around health care had there not been elected officials with a commitment to pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies. If the priority wasn't making sure there were profits for people that make drugs and sell drugs and people who provide medical care as insurers, if they weren't the priority and we were the priority, don't you think that would have been different? That's an immediate difference in your life. Right now, there are folks who are worried about Medicaid, Medicare. Would that be an issue at all if the priority wasn't, let's make sure there's enough profits for the corporations? I don't think so.
The prison system, along with the education system and the healthcare system, are three things amongst many others that I believe should never have a profit motive attached. The Corrections Corporation of America has been going around the states in 2012 and 2013 and asking states that are cash-strapped in their budget, hey, we'll take over your prisons. One of the stipulations is that if we take over your prisons for you, we'll pay you for them and we'll give you money, but you got to keep them at 90% capacity. And that basically attaches a profit motive to criminalizing American citizens.
The democratic self-government experiment that was started in the United States over 200 years ago has gotten completely corrupted.
We are not being listened to. We, the real people, are not being listened to.
When people say we can buy elections, which we've seen happening, and when we see people say we don't want to let people vote, those are all little signs that pretty big signs that our democracy is in trouble.
The Move to Amend's amendment that we're promoting will basically break the iron grip that wealthy individuals and corporations have over our democracy and allow the people to rule as they're supposed to.
Today, we have an un-American attack on that creed of equality.
You can't be free if you don't have a home.
It's time for an intervention, y'all.
Money is not political speech.
I wake up on any given morning in Salt Lake City, and the second I go outside, I'm breathing, depending on what day it is, the dirtiest air in the country or maybe even the world. And then I go to eat some food, and the prices of that food are determined by giant corporations. The place where I get the food is often a giant corporate grocery store, and it's often bad for me or downright poisonous, and I don't have a lot of options to eat different kinds of food. And then I go to travel to one of my organizing meetings, and since corporations control the kinds of transportation we're provided, I have to often take a car on a giant freeway instead of taking public transit or walking. And then I get to the meeting, and a lot of the decisions we make are often done inside the box of what corporations have gotten us to think is possible. And on the way back from there, I pass giant billboards telling me how inadequate I am and what I need to buy. So my entire day is basically controlled in this tight little area that corporations have decided it's okay for human beings to live and survive.
When considering the still unfolding history of these United States, the words of journalist Molly Ivins ring true. It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Move to Amend is the only organization right now that is very clear on what needs to be done with respect to the constitutional amendment. Specifically, we declare, or we want declared that corporations are not people. And we also want to declare that money is not speech. In every other organizations, they're mostly concentrated on Citizens United, money is not speech. To that, we always have to ask a question. How much better was our politics pre-Citizens United? Not much better. And the reason it wasn't better is that second portion was missing, corporate personhood.
It is clear that this country is suffering from a crisis that is deeper than the economic crisis or the ecological crisis. We are suffering from a crisis of democracy. And I say that because there are supermajorities on issue after issue, whether you're talking about healthcare, foreign policy, economic questions, education, or political reform, that clearly support substantive reforms, yet those reforms have not come into effect.
Every single one of our fundamental human needs are being violated on a daily basis. And until we get democracy back in this country, through overturning Citizens United and overturning corporate constitutional rights, we're not going to have a democracy that can function for the 300 million plus human beings in our United States.
I've been watching it for some 30 years now, but I never really felt like I needed to do anything about it until Citizens United.
We should be in the Capitol throwing all the lobbyists out, meeting with our congresspeople and telling them what we would like them to do to make this a better country.
If we, the people, don't do something about corporate constitutional rights, that not only our government, the United States of America, is going to go down in flames, but we are going to take the entire planet with us.
We have to be less vertical and more horizontal. And the horizontal there is focusing on a democracy movement that will help all of us achieve the individual solutions we want.
Every other issue that I care about, whether it be the climate, whether it be workers' rights, whether it be education for our children, whatever it is, it tends to be very hard to get things done without these kinds of reforms. Because the people who write the checks, the ones who are prowling around in the state capitol with their fat checkbooks and their nice suits, they're the ones that get the legislators' ears.
There's going to be considerable opposition, and there's going to be opposition within the corporate media, and strong opposition, which is going to make the job a little harder. But never underestimate the power of the people when they understand the message. Never underestimate that. I think that this is something that can be done quite quickly. I think it's something that can be done rather efficiently. It's just going to require a large enough parade. It's going to require a large enough people to understand the core concepts. And that's the real work that we have to do right now, is hit that critical tipping point, which is probably around 20 or 30% of the voting populace actually understanding the issue.
And a big part of the issue when creating a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy movement is an understanding of how race and racism were constructed in the United States through law, and how those laws informed our culture in much the same way those corporate rights have been constructed through the law to ensure rule of the wealthy minority over the majority, and how our culture reinforces and legitimizes that lack of democracy. Right from the very beginning, Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution defined people as property. You see, the authors of the Constitution were very interested in protecting their property, including slaves. No person held to service or labor in one state, under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. The Indian Removal Act of 1830. Indigenous communities are forced from their homelands. Over 10 years, 100,000 native children and adults marched thousands of miles west into unknown arid territory. 15,000 do not survive the journey. But over 25 million acres of land is made available for white settlers. 1854, the People versus Hall. Non-whites are barred from testifying in court. No black, mulatto, or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence in favor of or against a white man. 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Free blacks are taxed, but still have no rights of citizenship granted to whites. 1862, Emancipation Proclamation in District of Columbia. Slaves are freed in D.C., but former slave owners are reimbursed for slaves given up. Whites are paid over $1 million in reparations for lost property. 1862, Homestead Act. 50 million acres of formerly indigenous land in the West, having been violently invaded by U.S. soldiers in violation of treaties, is distributed by the government at low cost to white settlers only. And 100 million acres of indigenous land are given for free to railroad developers. 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act bans immigration of both skilled and unskilled Chinese laborers. 1924, Johnson-Reed Act creates an immigration quota system based on national origin, favoring Nordics over the inferior races of Asia and Southern and Eastern Europe. 1934, in the wake of the Great Depression, the National Housing Act is implemented, creating a federal housing authority to provide loans and federal subsidies for home ownership, but the FHA mortgage underwriting standards discriminate against non-whites and investment in non-white communities through a process called redlining. 1942, an executive order forces 111,000 Japanese Americans into concentration camps. And the war on drugs declared by Richard Nixon violently targets and imprisons people of color disproportionately through today.
Righteous anger can only be provoked by anger at injustice or unfairness. And I'm angry about the fact that we've got 20 to 25% of the children in the richest country in the world who go to bed hungry or undernourished every night. I'm angry about the fact that we have transnational corporations that are destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself. And I'm angry about the fact that the world that's being created with the rape and plunder of Mother Earth is a racist, sexist, and class oppressive society. You bet I'm angry. I'm angry because it doesn't have to be this way.
Are we in a class war right now?
Of course we are. And you know, Warren Buffett, I think, said it the clearest. He said, we're in a class war, and we've been in a class war for years, and my class is winning. And who is his class? The owning class, the people who own these corporations.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care, and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.
Justice Douglas, the greatest champion of the First Amendment that this country has ever known, once said that the Bill of Rights is a badge which says, "To government you shall go no further." What is the impact of corporations wearing that badge?
Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made?
The second thing that I think happened that we'll look back on and understand this as a critical moment is that we elected a president through a lot of grassroots effort. The young people in this country really made a historic difference electing a black president with a huge amount of hope. And I think that their expectations were not met. The system itself was a failure.
That's why it's really critical that we do more and we not just wait for elected officials to take care of this for us. This is what every single social movement that has come before us has done when they recognize that the system is really flawed and it's not working and the people in power are not going to self-correct. But it's time for the people to step in, and there's actually a process in our Constitution to do this. This isn't new. It doesn't happen very often, but whenever there is a system that is so out of balance, we've seen people's movements come together and respond by inserting human rights or correcting the issue to make clear that the priority needs to be on the people.
There is another history of the United States, and this is where you come in. This is the history of people coming together and rising up to change laws and change the culture. 1791, Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution were adopted to protect we the people from the excesses of government. At the time, we the people protections only extended to white male property owners. 1865, 13th Amendment, slavery abolished. Civil Rights Act of 1866 extended the rights of emancipated African Americans. Congress passed this by overriding an attempted veto by President Andrew Johnson. 1868, the 14th Amendment, black males get equal protection under the law. 1870, 15th Amendment, black males get the right to vote. Social change in 1886 included a major campaign for the 8-hour workday. Knights of Labor were 1 million strong. Populists drew up the Cleburne demands. Eugene Debs builds the Brotherhood of Locomotive Firemen. In 1913, the 17th Amendment, the U.S. Senate will now be elected by the people instead of appointed by state governments. 1920, the 19th Amendment. After 75 years of struggle, women get the right to vote. 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education. Schools could no longer be segregated based on race. Separate is not equal. The Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s protected voting rights, prohibited discrimination by federal and state governments, and prohibited discrimination in housing sales and rentals. 1971, 26th Amendment. Voting age is changed from 21 to 18. If an 18-year-old could be drafted to fight and die in war, certainly they could vote. 1973, Roe versus Wade. Supreme Court rules that anti-abortion laws violate a woman's right to privacy. Abortion was legalized.
If we look back in 50 years, we will realize just how completely and systematically we were being ruled.
Of course we had to end slavery. Of course women had to get the right to vote. Of course you could organize unions and they're not a criminal conspiracy. Of course Jim Crow segregation law has to end. Of course 18-year-olds have to get the right to vote if they're dying for their country. But this is the thing, Dennis. Every one of those movements seemed impossible when they began. And it was only when ordinary people began to get together and have conversations about how the society is organized and about what their desires are.
What's at stake is the country that I love, that we the people, a country that this was the great American experiment, that could the people rule rather than being ruled by the wealthy or the aristocrats. And we chose to have the people rule, to check or limit the power of government, to limit the power of the wealthy, to hold down the masses.
If you're not seeing the kind of change you want, I'd say ask yourself why you're not getting that. And chances are very good it has to do with the fact that our democracy is not working for the people. So whatever your number one issue is, you should make this your number two, because without this kind of change, it's going to be very hard to win the other reforms that we all want.
An issue that I think people used to think was too complicated for regular people to understand. And when it's in front of them, they're voting, you know, not just 50% plus one, not even just 55%, not even just 60%, you know, but 70, sometimes even over 80% in support of calling for an amendment. I think that's one thing that definitely proves that there's no question where people stand on this.
The reality is that this is a vital struggle. If Move to Amend doesn't succeed, then we will continue to live in a society in which corporations call the shots, both in our courts, in the halls of Congress, in the executive branch, and increasingly at the state and local level. And we've already seen the consequences of that.
So I actually think that right now it's really a world historical kind of a moment, but I even think that beyond the amendment, it's so much broader than that. We're really not just talking about an amendment that gets rid of corporations. We're talking about in a completely new way of understanding what democracy is, why it's important, and how our economic systems globally will need to be reconstructed.
We've got to build a movement step by step, intentionally and deliberately, to create the world that we want. And that means it needs to be social, it needs to be political, it needs to be economic, and ultimately we need a legal system that codifies under law a peaceful, just, democratic, and sustainable world. And when you talk about it that way, no. When I talk about it that way, I can have that conversation at an Occupy encampment, I can have that conversation at a Tea Party rally, I can have that conversation at a pool hall or a bowling alley. And ordinary Americans agree with me. Not on everything, but on the fact that something's not right and it doesn't have to be this way. That's where the agreement is, and that's the sweet spot of real solidarity.
How many gifts can a congressman take? And some.
Okay, folks, that was that stuff we produced a few, sometime, I guess it's a couple years ago, a few times ago. I hope that you found that interesting. It's a rather important, piece that we did there. Now, what I think I better do is I better go to the. I hadn't done this in a while, so I think I better go ahead and go to answer or check out what you guys have to say on the page. So bear with me as I pull that up. Let me go ahead and pull that up right away, in fact. But as you can see, there are procedures and there are procedures that we need to take to move forward. And I can tell you one thing, that's what we're doing. That is definitely what we're doing. So what I'm asking you guys, of course, is we all have to share this movement. We all have to be a part of this movement. We all have to be here to get it done. Bear with me as I pull that pull your things up right now. Here we go. I can see. Stay with me. Okay. Let's see what my people are saying. Mike Cisak. Let's see. Let me go to the older ones, of course, because I want to make sure and not miss it. Okay, Michael Redden. Walmart has a bad business practice of underpaying their employees, making government subsidize them via food stamps. And that is exactly the reason why what Bernie Sanders has said is important. Society is not one several open loops that people go in. It's a closed loop. And that closed loop, we cannot allow others to use that closed loop to pilfer the rest. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, that's not exactly what's happening. That is exactly what's happening. Michael Rudnan, yeah, that's a bit of a surprise as well. I'd rather have a different Speaker of the House. Pelosi has had her time. There's still a few weeks before the shift actually happens. I understand your point of view. I really, really do. Right now, though, for me, it's about efficacy. And I think for the amount of work that entails, something that she wants to do, I don't know how many people want to do it right now. Even the woman that folks are putting up there, I don't remember her name right now. She's saying that she doesn't know if she wants to put that kind of work in. Clinton's not going to run again. Hillary is about the only Democrat who would lose. I think you're holding the. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Trump won't get reelected, and but that's another topic for another day. Correction to my last CEO: to average employee pays 360 to 1. That is correct. All right, Michael Cisak. You only get the number if you only take the top 500 CEOs. That is lying to people. Not if we tell them we're talking about the 500 top CEOs, which is what really matters, right? If you take the 500 top CEOs and take the number of employees that they have, I think you get a good representative sample of what major corporations are doing to America. It's not about lying. It's about telling what the 500 major corporations are doing to the American populace. And it's a lot. They do hire quite a few people. So no, it's not a lie. Of all the 223,000 CEOs, the average is 194. Wow. You have said nothing again. You have not understood when I said not $10,000 and what you get an average of. You know, of those CEOs that they get that $194,000, guess how many of them make zero? Guess how many of them have these small LLCs, small corporations, small Chapter C company or Chapter Corp C, and are making $20,000 or making $5,000 or making $10,000. So that 194,000 makes absolutely no sense without context. CEOs in the aggregate, when it comes to the companies that employ the bulk amount of people, are ripping people off with the salaries that they have. Personhood is also guilty. Michael Rudnin. Michael Cisak, smaller corporations don't take advantage of their employees. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Rudnin. Michael Cisak. Michael, if you think government should dictate to business instead of customers determining how business work, then your mindset is tyrannical, authoritarian. No, you see, that is a double speak, and not only the double speak, but that is how you teach people to lie to themselves. Government is we the people. Private companies are whatever is right for the shareholder. Do you want to be accountable to a few shareholders who don't have the interests of society at hand? Or do you want we the people to determine what society is going to look like? After all, we create the wherewithal that allows the Jeff Bezos of the world. We allow the Bill Gates of the world. If you ever once believed that their intellect is what got them the billions, then that is a mind. That is when I write articles about the enslaved mind, that's what I'm talking about. They have taught you to believe that your work product, that your intellect, that they capitalize is theirs. It's a different form of thinking, my dear brothers and sisters. I have invented a whole lot of stuff. I have never tried to capitalize it as Bill Gates or anything of that nature. Okay? There's a whole lot of software that, just like Amazon capitalized on one click, that we could have capitalized on here under Willie's Computer Software Company. Never did. Including hardware that we produce. Never did. It doesn't compute in my framework. It doesn't compute in my form of thinking. That kind of greed never existed. Even before I dropped my company to do political activism full time, I never, ever thought that way. I never thought that way. Let's see. Bruce just says, have a good weekend and find a place for social action. Thank you, my brother. That's great for everybody. A message for everybody. Find a place for social action. You're so right, my dear brother. Mike says that government regulates corporations to prevent those corporations from screwing the people and heavily polluting the environment. Absolutely so. Fixing the mess of corporations or people will require fixing the mess of corporations or people will require a constitutional amendment. That's true. Okay, here's from Mike Cisak. Michael, we don't need regulations to have laws that give people a right to sue a business if that business committed fraud or damaged them through pollution. You know what you don't understand? I don't believe in first saying, okay, after they've polluted, now let's sue them and recover, because there's this other thing called bankruptcy. So what they do is they cause maximal damage when it is time to pay the piper, because corporations are people. corporations are their own entity. All you do in a corporation is you go ahead and you pollute, you do all the bad things, you bankrupt the company, and all the spoils, the riches that all those other people made off of that company stays with them, because the person who committed the crime was a corporation. And who is a corporation? That indivisible, that artificial entity that government says, oh, yeah, a corporation is a human being. Folks, learn what's really happening, my brothers and sisters. Learn. Michael Cisak, yes, much of this video is arguments that are based on false assumption. No, they are all facts. The good thing about the video is we gave you all the laws. We gave you the Supreme Court. You can look it up yourself. In that 25 minutes, we provided you with everything you need to do your own research. First of all, for those who believe in Move to Amend, for those who believe in the words that we say here, for those who believe in politics done right, it isn't at all difficult to follow and just say because it comes from you, we believe it. However, the video has everything necessary for you to do your own research and corroborate it or refute it. That's the difference between us and others, right? We tell you, don't take us at face value if you don't have trust in us. Look it up. We gave you all the material to look up. You can look up the laws, you can look up the Supreme Court and everything. The First Amendment applies to everyone. You can't exclude certain people. Right, but you first have to determine that corporations are people. Corporations should not be considered people. That's yet another person created. That's the issue. That's the issue. And Ms. Galani, you're absolutely right. Money and politics, they need to break away. You're right. Okay, let's see. We are coming to the end of the show, and I have to do my last pitch. I'm sorry, but I think you get the gist of the discussion from the left and the right from what we just discussed here. But folks, please do remember this is a call-in show, first of all. But likewise, we need your support. If you have already supported us, please encourage your friends to support this program as well. Let them know it's worthwhile. We don't just exist. We do things. We produce things. That particular video that you saw, we produced it and we let it go because we knew it was important. A lot of the video I shot in, a lot of the videos of the interviews you see, I shot in Madison, Wisconsin. We had the Democracy Convention in Madison, Wisconsin, and you know, the director needed a whole lot of shooting. He needed a lot of video from all the attendees there because we were going to have a whole lot of activists out there. So he asked me to shoot the videos out there. So I did the videos for the director out there in Madison. We do the work necessary to bring you the information, to bring you the pulse of the people. So I ask you to please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Be a part of helping keep the message out. And if you have already subscribed, please take that link and tell your friend, hey, we want this movement to work. We want to keep people informed. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Don't only subscribe. Please ask others to subscribe. For us to be able to sustain this, we need hundreds, if not thousands, of very, very small contributors, very, very small subscribers. That ensures that we can compete with the big boys. I mean, we are not trying to match them financially. I mean, I've rearranged my life to be an activist, but we do need your support. Again, this is Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis. Thank you very kindly for listening. Thank you for listening to that documentary. And please share this. I want other people to see it. I have the documentary on my YouTube channel by itself, not as a part of the Politics Done Right show. It may be easier to share that one. But please, folks, let's get the job done. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this, baby. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.